I know.
If you speak, would you listen?
Okay, great. Good evening. We'd like to begin the Transportation Forum, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We really do appreciate your coming out so that you can give us input into some decision-making that we have to do over the next several weeks. I'm Marie Doyle, Superintendent of Schools. This is Janet Robinson, Chair of the School Committee, and Tom Mazza, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. And Michelle Gratsky, School Committee, sorry. As we're looking at the budget, we're trying to explore every avenue that we can to maximize usage of the dollars that we have. One thing that we're looking at is transportation, because it is a sizable chunk of the budget. We are exploring whether or not we could reduce transportation by cutting 1 or 2 buses for $50,000 to $100,000 savings. We don't know if that's possible because there are implications for many different ways that we could go. So the point of tonight's presentation is to share the information that we have, the possible proposals that we're thinking about, and then to gather your feedback. What we're going to do is present a short presentation, and we have plenty of time for questions and answers after we're done with the presentation. Before we begin, could I ask how many are elementary parents in the room? Okay, and how many middle school parents? Okay, and how many high school parents? And I see we have a lot of both. Okay, great. So at this point,
And just so that everyone knows that we are, the reason we moved the meeting in here is so that it could be ease of recording. We are recording live for LCTV. So when it comes, so that people at home can see it, that we have, if people want to go back and watch the forum, they can. So when it gets to questions, answers, comments, we'll ask you to come up and speak into the microphone. It's not a microphone for the room, but so that the audio can be recorded on tape. All right, Tom.
So some of the responsibilities that the committee was charged with looking at is what our current operations are, where we currently provide service, how efficient are those services from both a route perspective, financial perspective, and meeting the needs of the residents and students of the district. So as Marie indicated, as part of the budget process, the subcommittee was formed to look at these areas and gather information and input to see if there are opportunities for efficiencies, for expansion, for improvement of what we currently offer. As part of the presentation, we'll cover some of what we currently do, both from a legal and policy perspective. The policy that's up there tonight is from the school committee policy manual, which is developed in accordance with Mass General laws, which require school districts to provide transportation for students in grades K through 6 that live more than 2 miles from school. The policy goes on to state that students who live less than 2 miles in grades K through 6 can receive transportation for a fee, provided they get to an existing established route. Same with students in grades K 7 through 12. They can take advantage of transportation for a fee, again, provided that they go to an existing stop on a current bus route. The routes are available on our district's website for the public. Enrollment procedures have not changed over many, many years. Students who qualify according to the law, so students who are in grades kindergarten through 6 that live more than 2 miles from school are provided a pass sometime in mid to late summer, August. We mail those out. And then anybody who does not qualify by law and would be interested in paying the fee can contact the business office either before school starts or during the first couple weeks of school to pay the fee and sign up for a pass. The pass gets created and mailed to them so that they can start receiving transportation services. And again, it's been the fee has been in place for approximately 10 years or so. I believe it was established in 2004. Later in the presentation, we'll look at the most recent changes to it. Looking at our current resources for in-town transportation, we utilize 6 buses. We have 2 buses that are utilized for Medco transportation. 3 buses are used for the high school routes. 3 buses are used for the morning routes for Glenbrook Middle School, and 2 in the afternoon. And then there's 1 bus that is used for Wolf Swamp. And again, they're tiered, so some of the buses that are used for the high school may be used again for the middle or elementary routes. So we basically have 2 tiers of service, so we don't necessarily have a bus for each one of those routes. We utilize the buses to cover multiple routes at different grade levels. The routes haven't been changed for at least 10 years. So part of our discussion in the subcommittee was, gathering input since none of us were here when they were developed, as to the rationale and the thinking at the time for the establishment of stops might not necessarily service the needs of the community at this point, which is why we felt that a forum would be important to get input about what the needs are and how can we accommodate them as best we possibly can with our resources in the budget. As I indicated, fees haven't been changed in a number of years. And the last time they were changed, which was in 2009, it was reduced from $200 to $175, which is where the fee currently stands this year. The 2-mile definition by law affects students at both middle schools and at Wolf Swamp. All the students at Blueberry and Center live within 2 miles, the 2-mile boundary. So we are, by law, not required to provide transportation to those schools. Also, we provided some after-school service to both Greenwood and the JCC for after-school programs. Those programs have expanded in terms of participation, which have impacted our ability to meet our responsibilities with the vehicles we have available. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Our responsibilities, again, according to the law, are to provide transportation for students in grades K through 6 who reside more than 2 miles from their school, provide transportation to our athletic programs for most after-school athletic events, and to provide transportation for Medco students, of which most of the funding comes from a state grant to provide that transportation. Cost. Currently, each bus costs approximately $50,000 to operate each year. Based on the fees that we collect, we this year collected approximately $22,000, or about 125 or 130 students are paying for the service. And so it only covers a fraction of the total cost, not only one bus, but it doesn't come close to the total cost that we incur to provide transportation. This revenue of $22,000 is in line. It's been pretty constant over the last 3 or 4 years, within a couple $1,000s. So the district, out of its general fund operating budget, is supporting the transportation that we currently provide by approximately $200,000 each year, which is why the subcommittee was formed, was to look at, are those resources, those expenditures being used as efficient as possible? Are there opportunities to improve what we do and possibly save money? As I indicated, the after-school care programs that we were supporting, we have been in communication with them to let them know that effective next year, we cannot continue to support providing those services. As I indicated, that those increased participation has taken up capacity and prevented us to support our own programs after school, which has caused us to go out and seek services from an additional provider to make sure that our athletic teams can be transported to venues in a timely manner. So we've notified them to let them know that, unfortunately, we can't continue the arrangement with them, even though they were paying for the cost. So these weren't services that the school department was paying for, but they were using our vehicles to support the transportation to their programs. I'll turn it over to Janet now to discuss some of the proposals.
Okay, so the committee has looked at a variety of things. Nothing that we have or are proposing tonight, nothing is set in stone. Our minds are not made up. Making a decision, like Marie has said, we want input from the community. We want to hear what is important to the users. So there are 3 different proposals, one of which is just to provide the services to have us in compliance with the law, which would mean that we would only transport students in kindergarten through 6th grade who live greater than 2 miles from their school. Or if a child has transportation as part of their IEP, those would qualify as well. So that eliminates the need for 2 to 3 buses for the district at a savings of about $100,000 to $150,000, depending upon ridership, depending on how many we're using. And the length of the time for students on the bus would be shorter, obviously, because there are less students, less stops, less routes. Proposal 2 would be designed with stops along the main roads. And I think, before I get into the proposals, right now, as Tom has said, we have routes set, and it seems like we're trying to fit students into those routes, where in our research, other districts get their ridership information and then do routes based on their ridership. So that is something that we are looking at, which would affect all of these proposals. So proposal 2A, the routes would be along main roads only. This may require students to cross a main road to get on the bus. Ridership would be combined, middle and high school. It would require changing the start times of the middle and high school to be coordinated. Most likely, it would be that the middle school would move up, starting earlier than its current time. May also include, or it may be a combination of moving the high school back a few minutes in its start time, moving the middle schools up a few minutes in its start time. With this, we could provide more services for Williams Middle School. That has been a concern this year, that there are families who are at Williams who would like to take advantage of busing. Okay. By consolidating ridership, by having one run that does middle and high school students on the same bus, it eliminates the need for 1 or 2 buses, depending, again, on how many students actually participate. So the savings to the district would be between $50,000 and $100,000. And the length of the time, again, would be shorter. We're only going main roads. We're only doing stops that, would be not spread apart, by miles, but, stops that are more strategically placed. The opposite, or proposal 2B, is the same routes, main streets only, may have to cross the street, but there would be a high school run and then followed by a middle school run, like it is now. Again, services would be expanded and more available for Williams Middle School. This doesn't eliminate any buses for us, so there's no cost savings to the district. And the length of time that students are on the bus would be similar to what it is now, because there would be 2 runs, maybe a little shorter, but can't promise that. It would depend on ridership and where those stops are. So in looking just at the second proposal, the difference between them is the consolidation. Do we put middle schoolers and high schoolers on the same bus in order to take advantage of a cost savings, or do we do separate runs, which would be the same costs to the district as it is now, not saving any money, length of the ride also being a factor.
Could I interject here?
Absolutely.
I know that one concern of many parents is placing middle school students and high school students together. There are many districts that have combined K through 8 on the same bus, middle school and high school on the same bus. In our experience, we find out that most of the time the trouble comes from the little ones on the bus, not the older kids. They would be separated so that the younger students were sitting on the front of the bus, the older students on the back of the bus. We would be very careful to follow up on any discipline or anything that occurred, but we have seen that it is successful in other districts. Okay.
So Proposal 3 also has 2 components to it. It would expand on what Proposal 2 was and be more similar to what it is now, which is routes with a combination of main roads and then going into neighborhoods. Again, the A proposal is combining ridership of middle school, high school students. And again, it would be expanding service for Williams Middle School. Again, that would not eliminate any buses, would not allow any cost savings. The length of time would be shorter, again, simply because you've got a combined ridership. And then, again, just like Proposal 2, the B side of it is the same concept in the routing. However, there would be one run for high school, separate run for middle school, again, including more services for Williams. This plan, however, would require us to have an additional bus. So we would have a cost increase to the district of $50,000 for that one bus, and the length of time of riding would be similar to what it is now. So again, just for comparisons, the difference between A and B proposals on both 2 and 3 are just whether we're combining ridership or separate runs for middle school and high school. So to give an idea, we've been having our bus drivers track our ridership just so we get an idea of how many students are actually on the bus versus those who have bus passes or those who have paid their fees. And this data was collected over a period of months. We just took them and averaged them. We have data from September, December, and January. So one of the buses has anywhere from 11 to 22 kids in the morning, 11 to 18 in the afternoon. The second bus at the high school has 17 to 23 in the morning, but only 7 to 14 in the afternoon. And the third bus at the high school has anywhere from 14 to 28 in the morning and 20 to 27 in the afternoon. And keeping in mind that each bus for middle schoolers and high schoolers can fit approximately 50 students. That's 2 students on a bench.
And I'd like to point out, this is where the transportation question arose, because I was looking at half-empty buses operating every day on a repeated pattern, so that when you're taking a look at paying $50,000 for buses, and some of them are not even half full.
At the middle school, at Glenbrook, we have 23 to 30 on one bus in the morning, 29 to 37 in the afternoon. The one bus that only makes a morning run there has 14 to 29, and the third bus that does morning and afternoon, 20 to 23, 25 to 36. So again, there's potential for half-filled buses. And again, we're figuring 50 students, 2 students to a seat for middle school and high schoolers, not trying to squeeze more of them together. So right now, like Tom said, Longmeadow busing fees are $175 per child. What we did was look at the districts who are within the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative, which is who we contract our busing services through. So that is Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, Ludlow, Agawam, West Springfield, Southwick, Tolland, and Hampden-Wilbraham. Thank you. Out of those, these are the only 3 who charge for busing. With the regional school districts, they fall under a different category. East Longmeadow's busing fee is $270 per child with a cap of 2 for the family. Ludlow's is $242, again with a family cap of 2 students. We didn't just look at the fees, but we were also looking at their procedures for enrollment, of how how they take their applications and then create their routes. So East Longmeadow, applications are accepted from June till August 1st. August 1st gives them time to work with the collaborative to determine bus routes. That information is then all sent to families before the start of the school year. And then if there are seats available on buses, it's opened up again for registration for families who are interested after things have settled down at the beginning of the year, which for them is October, the first week in October. Again, Ludlow's similar, where they're having applications the end of the school year through mid-July, and routes are then determined afterward. So based on information that we have, the registration for ridership is definitely going to change. That is one decision that we have made. In order to develop more efficient routes, registration for next year's transportation will be done before the end of this school year. So families whose students are riding buses will be registering by the end of June so that we have time to work with the collaborative to determine safe and effective bus routes. Letters then will be sent to all families who currently enrolled in August to say, here's your bus pass, here's where your bus stop is, here are the times of the routes. If families decide to enroll for services after the deadline, it's going to depend on if seating is available on those buses, especially if we're looking to consolidate buses. We've got to be able to plan, and not that we're planning to overfill a bus, like, overbooking flights. That's not our goal, but we certainly do want the buses to be comfortably full so that we're making the most of the resources we have. In terms of the fees, the subcommittee has not taken a stand on that yet. Any changes to bus fees will have to first go through the policy subcommittee, as the fees are set in our current policy, the EEAA policy. Whatever comes out of policy subcommittee will then be presented to the entire school committee for discussion and vote. So right now, there are no changes that we're saying tonight, absolutely, your bus fees are going up. That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying, if, as we go forward, that is something we're looking at, and those are the steps that we would take to take any changes. So now we'd like to open it up for questions, for comments, for concerns. Like I said at the beginning, the meeting is being recorded for LCTV. So we'd love to hear from all of you. If you just step up to the mic, give us your name. Like I said, the mic will not project your voice within here. It's just so that they can hear you on the recordings.
Shut off the screen.
Can you shut off this? Here.
What am I doing, red? Yep.
Hi, Mary Pat O'Connor, and I have children at all three schools right now. Next year will just be middle school and high school. Concerns, I don't want my sixth grader riding the bus with high school kids. My child don't want it happening. That's a concern of mine. Another concern is if some of those routes go through where they're going to be dropped off across the street, is there going to be a crossing guard to cross those kids across Maple Road? It's a busy street, especially during school hours.
You want to speak?
I can take it. I think when we're looking at streets, there are certain streets where we'll have to see if the bus can loop both ways. There are certain roads we certainly wouldn't want children crossing. And I think there are other main roads that it may be more feasible in a safe spot. But that's something that when you look at routes, you try and find the safest spots to have them dropped off. But I know in the past when I've been involved with, we make sure something like Longmeadow Street, the bus just loops both ways.
Yeah, because Maple does get busy.
Yeah.
Did I have another question? Just want to make sure someone have to get up twice. Nope, I'm very concerned about having a 10-year-old or 11-year-old riding with 17-year-olds.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Townsend. I live at 160 Ely Road, which is, for those of you who don't know, at the very bottom of a hill. If you are on the way to the recycle center, it's that steep hill at the very bottom where that last house on the right. I have two children, one who's in high school and one who's a sixth grader at Williams. When the oldest one was a Williams student, we asked if there could be a bus. No. It's not an established route, so no, we can't do that. So we endured the 3 years at Williams and endured Carline because both of my sons play instruments, and my oldest son plays trombone. For parents, you know what it's like to have a backpack that it weighs many pounds, and if you have a large instrument, and that's a challenge in itself. Walking up a steep hill with no sidewalks is dangerous. Then they would have to cross Longmeadow Street, and there's no neat crosswalk nearby. It's a dangerous street. And so for Williams, we drove, and we had to leave work early to go pick up. And that was a hardship. That was a frustration for us. Again, the same situation has arisen with my younger child, and he plays an even bigger instrument. So it's been very frustrating for us to have to deal with the lack of a bus at Williams. And so we do appreciate that there is a proposal to have a bus go to Williams. Like the previous speaker, I have a concern about the need for crossing guards and sidewalks, frankly. I would also like to address the issue of promotion of bus services. When my oldest son, when we learned that he would be eligible to take the bus for high school, we were thrilled. We paid the fee. We had him wait out at the designated spot. And one of our neighbors eventually asked us, he's had two children who've gone through the high school, said, "What is your kid doing waiting at the corner of my property every morning?" He said, "Well, he's taking the bus." Longmeadow has buses? People don't know that Longmeadow offers buses. I even spoke to a former school committee member, and she did not know that Longmeadow offers buses. So there's a lack of knowledge and promotion of this transportation option. And I would like to see the school department do a much better job in promoting the bus services so that more students can take use of this service. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Rob Kapner. I'm at 55 Mill Road. Just a couple thoughts piggybacking on our last commenter. If I'm reading the math correctly, we've got about 1 in 10 high school kids riding the bus. Just from an environmental standpoint, I mean, that's horrible. And no wonder, I mean, economically, it doesn't make sense. So again, if we can promote it, if we can make the routes more viable, maybe we can get more ridership. I don't know if the school committee's looked into the parking fee. You can incentivize that, not only raise revenue, but you can also encourage people to take the bus and get more ridership that way. I know that's probably not popular with a lot of people, but I'm sure the chief of police would appreciate that. Also, I work in a district where we do combine high school and middle school. We have had some parent anxiety about that, but I will say, as an administrator in another district, it's really not an issue. We've had a few minor things here and there, but it is a great way to save money, and you take better advantage of the routes. Sorry, I just lost my notes. I guess that's it. Again, I think we're, I just worry that, I appreciate your asking our opinions. I worry that we're narrowing our focus too much. And I'd seriously look into the parking fee as a way to incentivize it, and then open it up and publicize it and try to get more ridership rather than cutting back.
Kevin Shea, 64 Warwick Street. I want to second some of the things that have just been said. I completely agree that this is a missed marketing opportunity. We live 1.9 miles from Williams Middle School. Until this year, I didn't even know that we could buy a bus pass so that our kids could ride the bus. I think we need to reach out not just to the parents who are 2 miles away, but parents who are close to that 2-mile limit. That would seem to me a really nice way to try and raise some of the revenue that we just talked about, especially if you're near an established bus stop, which I just found out we are. So, that's kind of nice, especially when it's the middle of the winter. You can't walk because the sidewalks are all icy, which is a different topic for a different day. But, it's great when kids can walk and ride their bikes, but they can't do that all year round. And the issue of musical instruments is an important one. We take such pride in that in Long Meadow. It's really hard for kids with bigger instruments to get to school. And then what happens, everybody's in the car line, and that's just a mess. So it would be great if we could take better advantage of that. I would also like to say I'm not concerned about 6th graders riding the bus with high schoolers. I think that's a problem that other districts deal with, and they figured out how to deal with that. I think we can do that too. And one final thing to say is, as a parent who formerly used Greenwood, I'm disappointed to see that that's going away. That was something that was really important for us. I don't know how that's going to be solved, but that's something we took great advantage of. And again, I don't know what the solution is going to be, but we were very happy using that service, and we are thankful that the town provided, a vehicle, and it would have been impossible for us without that. So something that we took great advantage of. Thank you.
And Tom, do you want to speak to the fact that it's not that Greenwood would not be busing?
Yeah, I think overall Greenwood and JCC will find other transportation. It won't be us. We did have concerns from particularly Glenbrook parents. Some of the kids were on the bus over an hour while we were still providing service for JCC and Greenwood. So I think that we're just asking they find their own transportation provider so that we have more flexibility in our buses to get our kids home at a more reasonable time. But I believe they will still have service.
Thank you. I'm Gail Holt. I live at 55 Field Road. I actually thought I was 1.9 miles. I thought Kevin was closer to the 2. But I also want to echo, this is a very important issue, I think, for our town. And I think there's much more interest than the attendees here reflect. I think that we're a busy town with busy parents, and we can't, always get out at night. So I do think that I have talked to many parents myself and communicated with families, and absolutely know that there's interest in my area. I absolutely applaud this being an issue, being brought up and asking for input. I think that's step number one. I look forward to the inventory, kind of the registration process, so that you can collect actual data. Because I actually asked about the process last June, and the response that I received was, can't you carpool with somebody? And so I think that it's not that there hasn't been the inquiry and interest, but there hasn't been a sufficient process to express the volume of need in the town, and specifically for the Williams Middle School. Traffic, I believe, is going to increase. I worry about that. I've got a 40-minute commute to Amherst, Massachusetts. I'm worried as they start construction that traffic's going to change, and that could apply to other families that will change their own commuting patterns, which will change their ability to even participate in helping to transport children to school, if that is what they are doing now. You mentioned 10 years, that these haven't been duly looked at for a long time. I think the patterns, certainly in our town, of dual working households, single working households, that don't have the option to transport their children. I have, taken the option to ask people if I could carpool with them. The problem is I can't reciprocate. So I end up being a parent who's asking somebody for something, and that puts me in a very difficult position. It's not a comfortable position for me to have to ask other people to help out for that when I can't do something for them. Also, I agree with the walking issue. There's no way my daughter is going to walk 2 miles with the backpack that she has. And I suppose, you could argue that I could purchase books and have books at home, but that adds to my costs, and I don't think that's sufficient. So I think the publicity is key and the communication is key. There are many sidewalks near me that aren't shoveled and kept clear in a sufficient way, as there's not even crossing guards kind of all the way down our way. So I think in the northern end is even more important for transportation to Williams. Just recently, within the past year, there was actually a light put at the corner of Converse and Edgewood, Englewood, and Longmeadow Street, and that certainly helps, but there's concern there too. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Linda DeSara at 60 Windsor Place. I'm the mother to 4 children in this district, 2 at Center and 2 at Williams, and we are not close to either school. We're hovering somewhat about the 2-mile mark for both schools. I want to just address, I'm also the parent of musicians. I have a son who plays the trombone, one who plays the drums. They don't get any bigger and heavier than the drums. And also my 2 sons are at the ski club at Williams, which we offer all these great, phenomenal activities for kids, but there's no way for my children to carry their ski gear and haul their drum and walk to school. That's just not reality for someone who's 11. So I think greater publicity, I'm so glad we're looking at this issue. I think greater publicity of this would promote higher ridership. Honestly, I looked into a bus when my oldest was at Center. It was not something that, and at that point I have 4 children within a 4-year age span, so it would have been greatly helpful for my kindergartner to be able to take the bus, and it really wasn't something that I felt supported in when I called the district about. So fast forward several years, I never called again, to tell you the truth. So I'm really glad we're looking at this issue. I do have to say, too, professionally, I'm the director of guidance in another district. You are not allowed to educate children in the same classroom within a 48-month span. I have concerns about placing 50 children on a school bus when you're talking about an age range of grades 6 through 12. The school bus driver can't watch those kids, and I would love to say that all kids can self-regulate, but I'm kind of envisioning my my now 10-year-old daughter getting on a bus, because I do think that as my children get a little bit older, we will pursue the bus a little bit more and pursue less childcare options at home. I would think twice about putting my 6th grade daughter on a bus with 12th grade boys. I just would. So I would like the district to look into that a little bit more. I have some concerns as a parent, just knowing what I know professionally as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margaret Rudan. I live at 67 Shadyside Drive. I have a daughter at Blueberry who will be going to Glenbrook next year, and I have a daughter in the high school. I'm here mostly because of my affiliation with the Longmeadow Parks and Recreation Board, and because Greenwood Extended Day is part of the Longmeadow Parks and Rec. I will say that my children have used Greenwood from the age of about 2 months up through 5th grade. In fact, my older daughter went through 6th grade. It is a very, very important resource for parents where both work outside the home. I have to say that we are stunned to hear that you will be dropping us. We understood there could be some changes, but this is the first we have heard. I've been in contact with Barry Jarvis, and she's stunned. We are concerned that we may not be able to get a bus company to work with us, even if we work with the JCC to get something going. This is... There are people who will not move to Longmeadow because of no bus service for elementary kids. I personally know a couple. They'll move to Suffield instead. And this is just going to make it harder for working parents if we have to scramble for buses. So I'm stunned. I hope we can work something out. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dorothy Martin. I live probably the farthest away from all the schools, and I have a third grader. Let's see, how old are they? I have a eighth grader and a 10th grader. So I'm taxing around anyway, and I pay for 2 to ride the bus, which is quite expensive already. I also pay for my son to be in wrestling, and I've been driving him to all of his tournaments. So I'm very interested to know how the sports would come into that, affecting the sports. Seeing as I paid $360 for him to play wrestling, and he has to give his uniform back at the end, and that's pretty much all we're doing. So I'm driving him around to wrestling as well. I have concerns about my young son crossing Long Meadow Street if you change the route. We had a FedEx man that was killed right there. There are inaccurate numbers for the high school busing. My son Logan, who is in 10th grade, sometimes can't find a seat, and they set 3 to a seat in high school. So I find those numbers pretty inaccurate. I would also not like my daughter to be on the bus with older boys, because she already has a problem with the boys that are on the bus. And also, many parents are unaware that if you live closer, you can pay for busing. So that might help revenue as well. Thanks.
Hi, Alle Moreno. I have 3 kids, and I'm just wondering, on your figures that you have, you said, I think it was the bus driver gave you numbers of kids that were on the bus September, October, November. I don't know how accurate those figures are, because I have 2 kids in high school that take the bus. One may take it in the morning, one may only take it home in the afternoon, depending on their sports. But I paid for 2 bus passes. So the total should be, 2 of my children going in the morning technically and coming home, because I paid for the pass. Just so happens they stay after for sports or something and may not take the bus every day. Like during the fall, one of my daughters never took the bus home at the end of the day because she was at a sport. So I'm just wondering if you're counting people on a bus or counting the number of purchased bus passes.
No, the numbers that were reported are, the driver did head counts of how many students were getting either on or off at each stop, and so they were reported. So it's not how many have a bus pass, it's how many are actually physically on the bus.
Okay, but I would like my kid counted, because when on off seasons, 2 of my kids are taking the bus. So I don't think those figures are accurate that you're using.
That's why you check all year long, because you're right, the sports impact that dramatically, so that we're checking throughout the year to see if there are variations. One may play a winter sport, someone else is a fall sport. But it's, again, looking to see, maximizing the capacity on the bus.
Okay, but if I pay for a pass, I want to make sure my kid has a spot all year long.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Kate Crotto, Maple Road. I, to be honest, have multiple concerns about things that were presented tonight. I could stay here for an hour and talk to you about them, but I'm not going to tie up everyone's time. My 2 biggest concerns are if bus routes are reorganized and main roads are used, safety will become an issue. I know you've spoken about crossing guards being placed there at Wolf Swamp.
We didn't say that.
Okay, so I'm even more concerned now. We had to fight for a very long time to get a crossing guard at Hazardville Road, which if you're there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's a really busy street, and there was nobody there. So I'm very concerned that if you're dropping kids off on main roads, that there's going to be somebody there to ensure their safety. There was just, I think NBC News had a whole expose on how many people don't stop for school buses. It amazes me what happens. My second concern is, I'm wondering, you're looking at cost-saving measures. Have you sent the busing out to be rebid at all? because you're talking about the lower Pioneer Valley. There are other bus companies out there. So that's one measure. I do reiterate what people said about, well, there's lots of things that I would reiterate. But those are my two primary concerns right now. I'm also not clear on how many buses we're actually contracting with, because you did say you gave the breakdown for each school, but how many of those buses are actually being reused? I mean, are we talking 3 total buses, or are we talking 7? It's very difficult to tell based on the figures you gave.
We have a total of 6 buses we contract for.
Okay.
2 of them provide the Medco service. The remaining 4 do the in-town routes. So they're used for the different level of transportation.
So 4 for the whole town, basically.
Correct.
For in-town. Okay.
In terms of your bid comment, yes, we did work with the collaborative about 2 years ago to look at surrounding communities and their cost per day per bus. And what we are charged was substantially lower than what districts around us pay for outsourced services through a contract.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you did.
We most certainly can look at it again, but it was about 2 years ago that we did look at it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the open format because I think it's important to have a dialogue about it. But safety, as you are aware, has to be number one. I'm very concerned about that if they're rerouted. And I do think that promoting the bus, we're about 1.5 miles away from the elementary schools, and I just learned by doing my own research this fall that we could pay for a bus. We're close enough to get our kids to a bus route. I would have done that for a lot of reasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret Rudan, Shadyside Drive. I'd like to make 2 additional points. One is that you made a statement that the JCC and Greenwood programs have expanded. I can't speak to the JCC program numbers because that is not a town program, and that facility is not located in town. I'm not really sure why they're blended in with the Greenwood. Greenwood is a town program, although it is self-supporting. The other thing is that the Greenwood program has not expanded. We've always only used 1 bus. So I don't know where your data is coming from. I don't know if you're counting the JCC in the expansion, but Greenwood does not need more than 1 bus to get the children from 3 grade schools to Greenwood.
I don't know, maybe expansion wasn't the right word, but increase in participation, therefore increase in number of children riding the bus might have been.
No, I'm sorry. No.
We'll look into it.
Thank you. Slow one more thing. Alle Moreno, as I was walking, I hope it wasn't addressed when I went out, but I'm just wondering if anybody that's on this committee has been on the buses and went on the routes to see where doubling up is happening, because I've been told that certain roads 2 buses are going down. So I'm just wondering if anybody actually went on the routes to see for themselves if there's any doubling up going on. And maybe the answer is you get rid of 1 bus because you're going down the same roads with 2 different buses.
I think part of this process is to look at all the routes. It's been a while since we've done that, so that's definitely part of it. As for riding the buses, I'm not sure that we've done that, but
Jeff Rintoul, 27 Cranwell Lane. For those of you who have children who have instruments and have to carry them to school, be happy your kids don't play hockey. That's all I'm going to say, because you have no idea how much hockey equipment is. That being said, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my 2 children ride the Greenwood Bus, and I'm very disappointed that that's being closed to us, because Greenwood, for my family, has been a lifesaver. And I know other towns are beneficiaries of the bus service as well. I know East Long Meadow, there are several places in East Long Meadow that get bus fare from the town directly.
from Long Meadow?
In East Long Meadow. I understand
Okay.
the arbors get their children bused to them from the schools in East Long Meadow. So I guess my question is, you said you've talked to other districts. Have you talked to the vendors who provide the services? Not the districts, the people who actually would drive the buses and do that. Have they been contacted?
I'm not What vendors are you referring to?
The vendors who provide bus service.
The collaborative?
No, not the collaborative. First Student, other bus companies. Have you talked to them?
To hire them to come provide service here?
To hire them to come to Longmeadow to do the bus routes. Have you contacted them to get a quote?
We've compared that through the collaborative when we surveyed the surrounding districts who have outsourced.
But not the surrounding districts. The actual vendor who would provide the services. Have you talked to them?
No, we haven't sat down to have a conversation about outsourcing.
I would suggest that you talk to some vendors to get prices before you start cutting children's services. You have an issue with your buses at very low capacity based on the numbers. I know there's other parents who are saying they're overfilled, but I guess the question is, if you have a bus that has 25 people on it and it has 50, get a smaller bus. I mean, am I just the only one thinking that? Don't you have smaller buses you can have people use? I mean, do you only have one bus for the routes?
We contract for the routes based on what we anticipate the ridership will be.
Right.
The collaborative has to plan use of their vehicles, so switching out mid-year because they're seeing a lower capacity than what the bus holds is not always as simple of just taking a bus from somewhere else. They try to maximize all of their vehicles for both regular ed and special ed for multiple districts. So it's not as simple of they just have an extra vehicle that has a capacity.
But why aren't they buying a vehicle that is smaller? It's my question. Why aren't you using smaller vehicles if you have less ridership?
Because the need may change from year to year, and a smaller vehicle is not necessarily any cheaper to operate.
So you're saying a 50-passenger bus is the same cost as a 20-passenger bus?
I think to operate it, yeah, pretty much. You're not really saving much money.
Interesting. I'd also like to say that how is it that Greenwood is lumped in with the JCC for ridership when Greenwood is a town organization and the JCC is not a town organization? Can I understand that?
It's certainly something to look at. I think from our perspective, we had calls from parents with kids on the buses for over an hour.
Yep.
We had groups going to Greenwood and JCC that were taking upwards of 20 to 30 minutes to load while we had other students waiting to board our bus. It's something, information certainly can go back to the subcommittee and look at Greenwood and have that discussion should Greenwood be considered separate from JCC.
Okay.
But we have received an awful lot of parent complaints that children who are paying for the service are not getting home for well over an hour, and we have the small groups that are tying up the buses. But if Greenwood is concerned, the committee can certainly go back and talk about that.
Would you engage the park board on that?
We're not saying that Greenwood can't find transportation. I think Barry needs to look into that and keep conversations open with us.
Right.
We're not intent on shutting it down. We fully understand the value of Greenwood, and we would do anything to support our parents. But you have to keep in mind we're also dealing with kids that are on the bus for over an hour. So with the information that we had, we said, could you look into finding your own transportation? We have not heard from Barry that that's going to be a problem, and if that's a problem, then Barry needs to call one of us.
Okay, so will you tell us that you will talk to the park board before making a decision on the Greenwood bus?
Yeah, this will go back to the transportation committee, and they'll take a look at that. That's all in the notes here that we should look at that. We'll look at how many parents it impacts. We'll talk to Barry to see if she's investigating alternative transportation, how that will impact if she can't find it. That's all the point of this, to get this information.
Okay.
But based on the information that we've had through the first half of the year, we had more parents upset about the groups tying our buses up than we've heard from parents that it benefits. So this is new information.
Okay. Well, I can tell you one other comment is I do appreciate the buses that my children ride, and my children will never, based on where I live, be eligible to ride a bus to any of the schools, and that's fine. I have no problem with them riding, taking them, what have you. But I think the Greenwood option for people coming into this town, young families, two-family incomes, it is huge and very well used, at least from my experience.
Oh, and I promise you, we don't want to take that service away. We do appreciate we have two working parents and many families that work hard to be in Longmeadow because they want the school system. Our goal is not to block that from happening, and we will work very carefully with Greenwood to make sure that transportation is provided. But I do think Greenwood at least needs to see, is there an alternative to using our buses? If not, because I can go on and on about the sports program after school and other impacts that the committee committee has all looked at, but we'll look at that. But
Okay.
we intend to work with Greenwood. We're not going to leave our kids stuck.
Thank you.
So.
Jim Russell, 108 Bel Air Drive, Chairman of Parks and Rec. I would sincerely appreciate your reconsiderations and further dialogue with both our Director of Parks and Recreation, Barry Jarvis, as well as myself. We have a unique program at Greenwood, which has been there a number of years. Parks and Rec would like to work very closely with the school department. Thank you.
I encourage you and Barry, come over, sit down, and meet with us. We're happy to talk about it. Okay?
Just make sure I'm notified, if you would, please.
We'll do that, Jim.
Thank you.
Russell.
Not too bad, under an hour. Okay. I think this has been very helpful. It's always important to hear what people are thinking before you make decisions, and it's nice to have this many parents come out to talk about it.
I think, Rebecca, did you have...
If there's just time, I didn't know if it could come up for one
Sure.
more question. Well, I was curious in terms of what other forms of engagement will you be using to gather input? A forum is a challenging thing to accomplish when there are sports schedules, other things going on in the evening, and working parents. So I'm interested in what other forms of engagement will you use to get input on this issue? And I'm also interested in whether or not you will consider some of the options and ideas that have been raised. And I would like to especially echo one of the earlier gentleman's comments about incentivizing the bus by increasing parking fees. And I appreciate that is not going to be popular. But if we want students to take care of the environment, then parents sitting in a car line and having the exhaust fuming into the entryways is not healthy, nor is it supportive of the environment. And incentivizing bus ridership, which is safer than car ridership, as numerous research shows, that would be a much better option. So I'm curious to see what you're going to do about the engagement, as well as the specific suggestions that people are offering. Thank you.
I think we'll offer parents the opportunity to continue emailing. We've heard from many parents via email. This is on cable intentionally so parents can hear what was said, hear what we're proposing, and get back to us. We encourage them to do that. This is also a piece of a larger budget discussion, so you'll be hearing this embedded into that as we look at different options. I will address the parking issue. The students at the high school came to us and asked us to reduce the rate. They're not taking the bus. They were being charged to pay for the buses. They felt it was unjust that they were being asked to subsidize the buses because of the law. Parking fees can be used for transportation. So I think school committee has looked at that. I do agree that if we are a green environment, especially with some of the traffic lines at the schools, it would be great if we could develop a program where more people take the buses. But if we're doing that, we're going to have to put our heads together because it's reformulating the budget. And I see Owen sitting there. So school committee knows that it's always juggling different pieces of that to provide the best education, keep the most teachers in the classroom. But we will take all this information. People at home, please do email us if you have input. If there are follow-up discussions with your friends and you think we should know that, please let us know. This information will all go back. We'll have a lot of discussion about it, and we'll continue to communicate with you. We will eventually put out a decision on when the committee meets, which way we're leaning. And at that point, we'll ask again for feedback before a final decision is made. Do you want to come to the mic?
One question.
Sure.
No one's addressed the fact that you might change the middle school time or the high school time.
Mm-hmm.
What type of impacts would that be to, teacher work, and has that been addressed with the labor boards and all
the unions
contractings on that?
Yeah, the union's aware. We're thinking about it, that this is a possibility. I did survey all the superintendents in the state to see the start time for their high schools, because aside from this, the issue came up, are our high school kids in middle school, our high school, going to school too early? The research shows that high school kids function better later in the day. But on the other hand, you have the problem with kids who work after school in athletics. In response to the survey from all over the state, we are one of the schools that starts earliest in terms of time, so that, if school committee asked me, I'd recommend pushing that up 15, 20 minutes, and we would be more in line with what's better for the kids. We wouldn't interfere with sports programs, et cetera. If you look at our middle school schedules, our middle schools start far later than a lot of the middle schools in the area, as well as the state. So the union is aware of it. The LEA, we're working with them on that. The teachers are aware that this is being discussed. But if it could save 2 teaching positions and we felt it could be safely done combining the kids, it's something I'd encourage school committee to definitely look at.
And I would encourage you to look at the routes. I live on a corner of a side street that's very narrow, and probably 6 years ago, we had maybe 3 feet more of our corner than we have today. So any help in maybe moving the kids even to closer to the main road, or cutting down the crossroads that the bus, we have the elementary school bus crosses over 3 or 4 small side streets up near the Enfield line. I almost can't live any further away from the schools that I do right now and still live in town. So I'm very interested. I'm concerned that you were going to be stopping the transportation or raising the fee to a point where I would just end up bringing them back and forth to school. But it sounds like most of the concerns are about combining. I was just wondering about the change of time and maybe re-looking at the bus routes, because in 10, 15 years they have not changed at all. And I think they keep on maybe even adding new stops because parents call. And, we had a parent who was concerned about having a child cross a road that probably gets 10 cars a day. And they moved the bus route just for that one child for about 6 months, because then they ended up leaving town anyways. So just, if you could relook at the routes as well, I think you could consolidate a lot. I think kids these days could walk 2 blocks, 4 houses. The bus comes and stops at every single street. So that might help.
It's not an enviable position, because anyone who's ever been involved in doing bus routes, it's one of the most heinous jobs that you have to do, because you are trying to accommodate everybody, but it's really, really hard to find fair spots for everybody in the neighborhood. So we will do our best. I think we've had a lot of good information. I'm sorry. Please.
Sure. Sorry. Speaking about heinous positions you're in, putting yourselves out there tonight, again, we appreciate that. Just a point of clarification. The districts you quoted with their prices for busing, how did you choose those? And that was just a select, Ludlow's not that close, but what are other districts doing?
We chose the other districts who are within the Lower Pioneer Valley Collaborative, the Educational Collaborative. So that is West Springfield, Agawam, Southwick Tolland, Hamden Wilbraham, us, Ludlow, and East Longmeadow. And out of those, because since we're all using the same busing services, it didn't seem fair to look at busing services outside of that, because then you're getting into communities that are much farther than us geographically and much different. And out of those, the 3 that were up there, us, East Longmeadow, and Ludlow, we're the only 3 who charge for busing. Hamden, Wilbraham, Southwick, Tolland are both regionalized school districts, so they have much broader transportation issues. West Springfield and Agawam have a much greater area to cover in terms of their busing, so they don't charge either.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay. Again, thank you. This is extremely helpful. I think we will do what we can to make it safe and best for all the children that we're dealing with in district. So thank you. Any more feedback, please do email us or catch us after the meeting. Thank you.